I met them in a cafe. I was working as a waitress while studying to be a pastry chef, and Pedro was already working as an architect in a small company. He used to stop by for a cup of coffee near his workplace. Our hearts seemed made for each other. We didn't even need to talk. Just being in the same room brought joy to both of us. 2 weeks after our first date, we started dating, and 3 months later, we got married. People said that our marriage was definitely made in heaven. We lived in a small apartment provided by Pedro's company. It turned out that neither of us had any relatives. There was no one closer or dearer than the two of us. We decided that as soon as we had a nice house, which Pedro had always dreamed of, we would start thinking about having a baby. "I want a big family," Pedro would say. "Pedro, don't scare me. I hope you don't want 7 children," I'd reply. "And you're against that?" he asked, kissing me. "I don't think I can take it. I won't be strong enough and I'll crumble like a lump of sugar." "Don't worry, Rosita. I won't let you fall apart, so get ready to be the mother of many children." 3 years passed in a happy married life. Pedro had become the chief architect of the company, which had expanded significantly in that time, while I made bespoke suites at home. We were waiting for our cozy new house to be built. Pedro thought carefully about every detail when creating the design, and even made a 3-dimensional model of our future nest. We celebrated our 4th anniversary in the house of our dreams. The only thing missing were children, so that their laughter would fill every room of the Gonzalez family's spacious home. "Rosita, don't you still feel nauseous in the morning?" Pedro asked me. "Not yet," I replied jokingly. In fact, not all women get nauseous. I've read that if the pregnancy is wanted by both spouses, then the woman usually doesn't feel any discomfort. "So that's it. You'll only notice that you're carrying the baby when it's ready to come out," Pedro said happily, covering my hands in kisses. "You're quite a character," I laughed, playfully pushing him. Another year passed, but the long-awaited pregnancy didn't happen. "Pedro, do you think there's something wrong with me?" "Why am I still not pregnant?" I asked. "Rosita, my dear, don't worry. We just really want a baby and it's not happening. We need to learn to let go. Trust me, I want a child, or rather, children, as much as, if not more than, you. They will come. They must come because I love you so much, my night-eyed girl." "I love you too, thief of brunette girls' hearts," I smiled in response. "And here's the heart I stole, and I've only ever loved a brunette. Even if you had transparent hair, I'd still fall madly in love with you." His voice carried such tenderness that I felt calm and light. "You have a uterine tilt, Ms. Gonzalez," the doctor said slowly. "The chance of pregnancy is 1% in 100. "And what?" I began in a shaky voice. "Nothing can be done, unfortunately." "No, I'm sorry." I went home and threw myself on the bed, burying my face in the pillow. "Why? Why did this have to happen to me? Why did this happen to us?" I cried, punching the pillow. "And what about Peter? Isn't his dream of a big family destined to come true? No, I can't allow that." I decided to have a serious talk with my husband. I prepared dinner and opened a bottle of good red wine. "My joy, do we have an event today?" Pedro asked as he entered the house. "It smells like Christmas." "No, I just wanted to make you happy," I replied. During dinner, I could barely eat. Everything was slipping out of my hands. "What's wrong, my little bird?" Pedro asked worriedly. "Are you feeling unwell?" "No, we just need to talk." "Did something happen? Tell me, we're a family." "Pedro, it's better if we split up." "Have I offended you in any way? You must be upset that I spend a lot of time at work." "No, my dear," I replied, putting my hand over his. I don't have the right to deprive you of the joy of becoming a father." "Rosita, listen." "No, Pedro, listen to me first. I've been to the doctor. I can't have children. 1% out of 100. "Wait, that's not final yet. It's definite," I wiped a tear from my cheek. "Then you need to find another woman who can give you children." "Rosa, I don't need another woman. I need you," he squeezed my hand. "But I won't be able to give you babies. This house will be empty, you know, and all your dreams will turn to dust. Rosa, please calm down. You're all I have. You're my heart, understand? Even if I never become a father, I'll be with you. We'll fight, we'll go to the capital, even to the ends of the earth. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. They poured out of my gray-green eyes like a torrent. For several years, we never gave up hope of becoming parents. Pedro took me to the best doctors in the country and even abroad, but all to no avail. They all said the same thing. The chances of getting pregnant were close to zero. Pedro, darling, I began one day as we walked along the beach. What if we adopted or fostered a child? Rosa, my little bird, I'm not ready to raise someone else's child. I'm sorry. I understand. I'm scared too. I've heard all sorts of stories about how children can be different, sick, with bad genes that aren't immediately recognizable, and then the adoptive parents suffer for the rest of their lives and, as terrible as it sounds, regret their decision. Exactly, they regret it. Imagine taking a baby and then realizing that it's nothing like us, either physically or internally. What do we do then? Yes, you're right. But, sometimes I feel so alone. My cookies and cakes aren't enough anymore. The house is so big and so empty. Rosita, my dear, please don't cry. We're going to organize some kind of children's club right here in our house, and you can look after them. What do you think of that idea? Pedro, I'm just a pastry chef. What can I do with the children? Think about it. If necessary, you can get another education. And the children who fall into your loving and gentle hands will be happy. Pedro, how can you make me happy so easily? You make me believe in myself. That's so important. I would have died a long time ago without you, my golden architect of human destinies. Wow, you're giving me quite a title. You're a poet. Oh, stop it. What kind of poet am I? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my husband's words. What if I actually taught the children something? Then the house wouldn't be so empty and cold. But what to teach? I used to love embroidery and crochet. Yes, I could spend hours creating. My friends at school marveled at my dedication and precision. It's decided. I'm going to teach the children to embroider and crochet. I just need to remember everything and practice a bit. After that thought, I immediately fell asleep. I'm going to teach the children, I said to Pedro with a smile at breakfast. That's great, my little bird. What are you going to teach them? How to become as sweet as you. Pedro, I'm serious. You're always joking. Remember how I used to embroider and crochet before? And then I somehow stopped. I remember. You still haven't finished my portrait, shameless. He winked at me. I will, my dear, I promise. So I'm planning to teach these children. Do you think I'll manage it? Of course you will. All the children in the neighborhood will run here. The house will buzz like a beehive. May the Lord hear your words, I said dreamily, pressing my hands to my chest. I changed beyond recognition. I embarked on a vigorous campaign of self-education, remembering all the things my grandmother taught me in childhood. I started buying books and magazines with craft patterns and expert advice. Soon, I had my first students. They came eagerly 2 or 3 times a week to learn handicrafts from the kind and sensitive teacher. The house really buzzed, as Peter had promised. I was happy. Several years passed. Without realizing it, I turned 30. It happened the day after my birthday. I was waiting for Pedro to come home from work, as usual. My students had already left. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Strange, I thought. Pedro always opens the door by himself. Pedrito, is that you? I called through the door. It's me, my little bird. Open up quickly. What's wrong, darling? I stared at the package he held in one hand, while he clutched his precious black leather briefcase in the other. Rosita, Pedro, is it a doll? Where did you get it from? You see, my little bird? And then, suddenly, the package began to move and squeak. I automatically grabbed the squeaking package from my husband's hands. Pedro, it's a baby. Who is it? I don't know, my joy, he replied calmly. I found it by the side of the road, lying in an old basket right under a bush. I couldn't just walk straight past. Oh my God, this is a gift from heaven. Pedro, why did you say you were lying down? Look at that little face. It's clearly a girl. She even looks like you. Yes, such a lovely face, Peter said tenderly, looking at the baby's face. She's my little girl, my daughter. I won't give her away to anyone. And so Pedro and I became parents. Monica grew up to be a lovely little girl. Everyone around us said she looked a lot like me. Nobody suspected that we weren't blood relatives. "Mummy, do you love me?" Monica asked as I put her to bed. "Of course I love you, my little flower, more than anything in the world." "And Daddy?" "And Daddy too. I don't have anyone nearer and dearer than you two. Sleep well, my love." "Are you going to teach me to knit and embroider like you teach the girls who come to our house?" The girl continued, holding my hand. "Yes, my little ray of sunshine, I'm going to teach you. But for now, close your eyes." "Are we going to the sea tomorrow?" asked the daughter again. "Monica, it's late." "You need to sleep." "But yes, we're going to the sea tomorrow," he said, kissing her tenderly on the cheek. Monica was a curious and gentle girl. She dreamed of becoming a teacher for elementary school children. She always had lots of friends, and the house was constantly full of happy children's voices. I never felt lonely or unnecessary. Pedro was delighted. He adored our daughter and spent all his free time with her and me. It was a real friendly and happy family. Pedro's dream of having a big family didn't come true, but he had the hearts of his beloved girls. Monica didn't abandon her childhood dream of becoming a teacher and entered a pedagogy college. She was the best student in her class. Everything seemed to come easily to her, and ideas flowed from this energetic girl like lava from a volcano. Monica graduated from college with honors and immediately started working in a school. "Darling, why do you want to go to an ordinary school?" Pedro asked one day. "Dad, what do you mean by ordinary school?" "I could arrange for you to go to an elite private school." "But Dad, I don't want anyone to arrange anything for me. I want to achieve everything on my own, and, what's more, I want to work with children from ordinary families." "Monica, I have nothing against ordinary people, as you say, but you're such a good specialist. You deserve more." "No, Dad. I want these children from poor families to become intelligent, believe in themselves, and achieve a lot in their lives." "All right, my butterfly, fly. I understand. You're a teacher sent from on high." Soon after starting work, Monica met a boy with whom she fell madly in love. His name was Antonio. He was handsome and always playful. She couldn't spend a day without him. We would walk along the seafront and talk about books, about different parts of the world we wanted to visit. They were very young, and life stretched out before them like a long road to the horizon. "Monica, darling." I started a conversation with my daughter one day. "You should be careful with your boyfriend, with Antonio." "Mom, what's wrong? I love him. Is that bad?" "No, darling, it's not bad. I just worry about you a lot. I feel that you take the relationship very seriously, while it seems a bit frivolous." "Mom, Antonio is really nice. I believe in you, my little flower, but I just don't want you to get hurt." "Mom, everything will be fine. Don't worry." She kissed me on the cheek and ran off to the meeting again. My worries were confirmed. Maybe Antonio was a decent guy, but he clearly hadn't learned to take responsibility, and his love turned out to be just words. The school children started summer vacation, and Monica only worked a few hours a day. The rest of the time she spent in her boyfriend's studio. Antonio called himself an artist, but it seemed he hadn't created anything relevant yet. One day, coming back from a friend's house, I found Monica in the living room, looking upset about something. "Monica, my girl," I began and stopped. My gaze fell on the coffee table in front of the sofa where my daughter was sitting. There was a pregnancy test. A red cross spoke more than words. "Mom, don't worry, please," Monica began, nervously holding a book in her hands. "Have you told Antonio yet?" I asked calmly. "Not yet." "Then go ahead. Send him a photo of the test." "Do you think that's the right way to do it, rather than telling him in person?" "Yes, I think so. Men, you know, they need some preparation to understand the situation." "Mom, I thought you'd be beside yourself with this news, but you're smiling. You're the best mother in the world." "Why would I be beside myself? It's time I became a grandmother, otherwise I won't have the strength for the grandchildren later. I'm going to get very old." I sat down next to Monica and hugged her, stroking her hair. "Mom, you're going to be the youngest and most beautiful grandmother in all of Spain." Putting her head on my shoulder, Monica said, "Let's send the photo to Antonio straight away." "Do you think he'll be happy?" she asked. I think so. He's an artist, sensitive by nature. There was no reply from the father-to-be. He hadn't been online since the morning. Mom, I'm worried. Maybe I should go to his studio and have a chat. All right, darling. Just be careful. Monica nodded, put the phone in the pocket of her light beige pants, and left the house. The girl returned half an hour later. So, did you talk? I asked, standing next to the flower bed near the house. No. His studio is closed, and the person who sells books in the same building said he packed up and left at around 9 a.m. Did he say anything about a trip? No, he didn't say anything. Nothing at all. Call him, everything will be clear. I called, Mom, but he's not answering. He just ran away. Who knows what made him leave? Mom, if he loved me, he'd say he was forced to leave. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. Don't cry, darling. Let's wait. You know, life brings all sorts of things. Mom, the owner of the bookstore told me that he seems to owe the landlord a lot. He definitely ran away, and I foolishly believed him, believed in his love. You were right, Mom, to warn me to be more careful with Antonio. Why didn't I listen to you then, Mama? Why? Feelings, darling, feelings. Don't be upset. It's bad for you and the baby, too. Let's have some tea. I've made nougat. You love it, don't you, sweetheart? Come on, Mom. Did you tell Daddy? I'm sorry, darling, I couldn't hold it in, and I told him everything. And what did he say? Is he going to scold me? You're in for a surprise. He's planning to buy you a car when the baby comes. Oh, I've ruined the surprise again, I said, covering my mouth with my hand. I need to be punished. Your father and I are going to deprive you of nougat. Monica laughed. Oh no, not that. We started laughing together. Laura was born a little early, but both mother and daughter were fine and were soon released home. Pedro and I prepared well for our granddaughter's arrival. The baby's room was ready. We thought of everything from the wallpaper to the pacifiers. Our granddaughter will have everything a little princess could dream of, Pedro would say as we drove to pick up our girls from the hospital. Pedro also took care of a separate room and other conveniences for his daughter and granddaughter in advance. All the love he had planned to give to his large family was now poured out on his 3 beloved women: wife, daughter, and granddaughter. Laura grew up as a mischievous brat, unlike Monica, who was interested in books, pencils, drawing albums, and Play-Doh from an early age. Laura always wanted to be on the move. You should have been born a boy, Monica laughed. Not everyone in the family has to like drawing and doing crafts, Pedro said, lifting his granddaughter in his arms. Don't offend my little fighter, Dad. You should teach her to shoot so that she definitely becomes a fighter. And I will. Do you doubt me? I'll teach her. No, Dad, I don't doubt you at all. No shooting, I interjected. I'm going to teach Laura how to make cookies and nougat. You two will end up fighting, Grandpa and Grandma, Monica laughed. Looks like you'll have to have another grandchild to share. I always knew, that my daughter was the wisest in the world. Look at her, she's a real thinker. Pedro's dreams came true, albeit many years after they first appeared in his mind, but they did come true. None of our acquaintances could believe that we hardly ever fought or argued. Our home was a meeting place where joy, happiness, and genuine love reigned. It seemed like a fairy tale world where only fairies, gnomes, and elves lived. But trouble knocked on the door of this fairy tale world when Laura turned 5. Pedro fell ill. The doctors diagnosed him with stage 4 brain cancer. My beloved husband, father, and grandfather literally died within a few months. I didn't think I would survive that loss. It was so heavy for me. My love had not diminished since we met in that cafe 38 years ago. And now he had left us. No one would ever call me Birdie again, or call Monica a butterfly. No one else would play with Laura or teach her to shoot. No one would create any more fantastic building projects. Only memories would remain. Only the warmth in their hearts that they evoked and the bitterness of loss. Darling, I can't live in this house anymore, he said one night when Larita was already asleep. I think we need to sell the house and buy something smaller. Whatever you say, Mom. To be honest, it's hard for me to stay here too. Everything reminds me of Dad, his jokes. She sniffled. You're right. We need to sell this house as soon as possible. So we did. We sold the big house, designed so lovingly for us, and moved to a modest cottage almost by the sea. The sea washed away the sadness and instilled hope for the better. It became a little easier. The house smelled of cookies again, and the students started coming back. Monica was still working at the school, and it seemed that everything was slowly returning to normal. But I still had to face another ordeal, a terrible ordeal. There was no sign of trouble. Monica and her daughter were planning to visit Isabella, Monica's best friend, who lived a long way from us. They were going to stay there for a few days. Maybe you shouldn't go, I suggested, helping them pack into a small suitcase. Mom, we've made arrangements. Isabella is waiting for us. She's bought a lot of presents for Laura and prepared enough food for probably 100 people. You're going to be alone, aren't you? We won't be long. We'll be back in 3 days. All right, dear. Forgive me, I'm still trying to keep you and Larita close to me. I'm getting older. Mom, you're not getting old at all. You're the youngest and prettiest among us. Thank you, Monica, I said affectionately. I had sometimes called her that since childhood. Monica always scolded me for it, but now she actually liked it. The next day, around 1 p.m., I received a call with the worst news imaginable. Your daughter and granddaughter died in a car accident. Their bodies have been burned beyond recognition. I'm sorry, said the voice on the other end of the line. I was paralyzed, the ground slipping from under my feet. No, it couldn't be true. It couldn't be my girls. It had to be a mistake. Monica would call me at any moment, happily telling me that everything was fine with Larita, that we would be together again soon. But Monica didn't call. I had to identify the bodies of my loved ones from the items that had survived. Yes, they were my daughter's earrings and my granddaughter's bracelet. At that moment, my life ended. I stood by the grave for a long time, talking to myself. Why me? Why did this have to happen to me? First Pedro, my dear Pedro, with his radiant eyes, and now my girls, my beloved ones. What did I do wrong? Where have I sinned? Why do I deserve such punishment? Why should I go on living now? Tears streamed down my pale cheeks as I clutched my handkerchief with trembling hands, not even trying to wipe them away. I had always been thin, but now I seemed totally devoid of life, so sad and grief-stricken. I visited the cemetery often. My husband's grave wasn't there. He had asked for his ashes to be scattered at sea. We fulfilled his last wish. But there was the grave of my daughter and granddaughter. I stayed there for a long time, laying fresh flowers and crying. What saved me were my students. Through handicrafts, I could momentarily forget my triple sadness. I was afraid of being alone. Thoughts overwhelmed me, and it felt like I was going mad, like I was going to be torn apart by pain and memories. I'd rather be dead too, I thought, lying sleepless in bed. Why did I let them go? My girls would be with me now. We'd laugh and bake cookies. Sometimes I couldn't close my eyes until morning. I tried to occupy myself in the small garden around the house, but nothing worked. Everything slipped out of my hands. 5 months had passed since Monica and Larita were buried. That day, I was once again standing by the graves of my beloved girls, crying in silence. A cemetery worker, it was obvious from his uniform, was cleaning up the dried flowers and putting them in a black bag. "Excuse me, is this your daughter?" he asked suddenly. "Yes, my daughter Monica and my granddaughter Larita." "She looks a lot like you," he said, looking at the photo of the young woman. Same thoughtful eyes and gentle smile. "Thank you," I sniffled slightly. "Many people say we look alike, even though she's not my daughter by blood." "Adopted daughter?" "Yes, although you know it's a gift sent from heaven. They left her under a bush, in a tattered basket. Who could abandon such an angel in a basket full of holes? I still can't understand it." "Well, if I tell you what I did over 25 years ago, you won't even want to talk to me. Nobody knows about it, just me and that person." "What person?" "The person I sold my newborn daughter to." "Good God, what made you do that?" I asked without judgment. The cemetery worker told me his story, which later changed both our lives. Ricardo, the cemetery worker, was dating a simple girl called Anita, as he always called her. They loved each other very much, and Ricardo was determined to marry her. He was 19 at the time, and Anna had just turned 17. One evening, Anna, as usual, waited for her lover on the blue bench near the old tree. Ricardo was working for a man who was involved in fish processing in a small workshop. "Ricky," Anna began suddenly, "we need to talk. It's very important." "What's wrong, my love?" "Ricky, I'm pregnant." She lowered her eyes. "Anna, don't worry, we'll deal with it together. I work, we'll live together. I just have an elderly grandmother who I can't leave. She loves you. She's just very weak." "Are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious, silly. My father will kill me if he finds out. No, let's get married and raise our baby." Anna threw herself into her lover's arms and began to cry. He stroked her curly hair and whispered words of love. Anna moved in with Ricardo. Her parents stopped communicating with her. Their daughter didn't meet their expectations and went the wrong way. Ricardo worked, and his beloved took care of the house and her sick grandmother. Soon the grandmother died, and Ricardo and Anna were left alone, waiting for the baby to arrive. Anna didn't go to the clinic. She was afraid that her underage status would be revealed, and Ricky would get into trouble with the police. In the apartment opposite theirs lived a woman who had worked as a midwife many years ago. She sometimes checked on the girl's condition and promised to help if necessary. Anna was grateful to her and offered her help in return. The birth began unexpectedly and very quickly. Ricardo ran to the neighbor. "Donna Rita, please open up. Anna is—" "I'm coming," said a voice from behind the door, somewhere deep in the small apartment. "Donna Rita, please, Anna is—" "I'll be there in a minute. I'll get everything I need." "Go to her, my boy. Go." Anna was lying down, exhausted, but she had managed to give birth to a beautiful baby girl. Ricardo's joy was overshadowed by his concern for the condition of his beloved, who was looking weaker and weaker. "We need to call an ambulance," he said quickly. "Quick, go make the call, Ricky. I love you so much," she whispered almost voicelessly. Ricardo rushed to her side and held her hand. "Anita, my ray of sunshine, everything will be fine. I'm going to call the ambulance right now. I love you," she repeated, "and our little girl." Her hand fell inert, her gaze fixed. "No," Ricardo cried, holding his beloved's hand against his cheek. "Don't leave me. Don't abandon me." Rita touched his shoulder gently. She's no longer in this world, my boy," she said slowly, closing the girl's eyes with her hand. What was he supposed to do? How could he raise the baby alone, with no one to help him, and still have to work? Ricardo walked with the little girl in his arms, not knowing where to go. He sat down on a large rock by the side of the road and stayed there for perhaps half an hour. "Why are you so down, friend?" asked a well-dressed man cheerfully. "Anita, my girl, died. She couldn't take the birth," Ricardo began to explain haltingly. "I don't know what to do. We don't have anyone. Listen, kid, I can help you. Give me the child. My wife and I will be good parents to her." "Why do you want someone else's child?" he asked, surprised. "My wife can't have children, and we've been dreaming of a baby. What can you give her? How will you feed it? I'll pay you back and no one will ever know what happened here, I promise." Ricardo looked at his daughter and handed her over to the man. He didn't even ask the man his name. He just noticed that the man's eyes shone with kindness. He took the baby in one hand and handed Ricardo a thick wad of cash with the other. "Be happy, brother," said the man, and walked away quickly. Ricardo stood confused at the side of the road, then put the money in his jacket pocket and headed in the opposite direction. He still had to say goodbye to his beloved Anita. Every day he asked his daughter and her mother for forgiveness. "Don't you know anything about her?" I asked sadly. "Nothing," he replied quietly. "What's your name?" I asked. "Ricardo." "And I'm Rosa. Pleased to meet you, Don Ricardo." "Pleased to meet you, Donna Rosa." With that, we parted. At home, I remembered the story of the gravedigger. Why does this happen like this? Someone who could give everything to a child and wanted more than anything? God didn't give her the chance to be a mother, and the mother of this little one was taken away from her soon after birth? It's so unfair, I thought, sitting in the gazebo in the middle of my garden, which had fallen into complete neglect. I couldn't find an answer. A week later, I returned to the cemetery. I was about to leave when I suddenly noticed Ricardo. "Hello, Don Ricardo," I said. "Hello, Donna Rosa, how are you?" he replied. "How can a confirmed bachelor be?" The man smiled sadly. Dona Rosa, could you tidy up my garden? I'll pay you well for it. Why not help a good person? I can help, I have tomorrow off, and as you understand, no plans except a little laundry, he said. Oh, that's wonderful. How about around 11? I'll write down the address and phone number now, I said, taking a notebook out of my leather bag, scribbling something down with a silver pen, tearing the sheet quickly and handing it to my companion. He put it in the breast pocket of his work jacket and promised not to be late. The next day, at the appointed time, Ricardo was out of the house. Hello, Don Ricardo, I'm glad to see you. I opened the door and said, Would you like some tea? Hello, Dona Rosa. Let's deal with the garden first, then we can have tea. He smiled. You have a very beautiful house and a lovely garden, too. Thank you. We had a huge house. My husband designed it. And after his death, my daughter and I sold the house to get rid of the painful memories and bought this small house for the two of us. But now, I'm going to have to live here alone. I concluded sadly. Well, come on, I'll show you where the necessary tools are. 2 hours later, the garden was unrecognizable. You've done a great job, thank you, I said almost cheerfully. We drank tea in the gazebo, which resembled a lace tent. Do you make these cookies yourself? Ricardo asked. I used to make them with my girls. I haven't made them since that terrible day, but yesterday I decided to make them to please you. After all, there's no one else to please me, I said sadly. Don't say that. You're not old and you've managed to please me, she said suddenly. Ricardo stared at a simple necklace around my neck. It was a round wooden pendant adorned with carvings. Something stirred inside him and his heart suddenly raced. Dona Rosa, where did you get this necklace? He asked. That? I pointed to the pendant. Yes, that. I found this pendant wrapped in cloths with my Monica. There's an engraving on it, the letter A. Someone's name probably began with that letter. After my girls died, I started wearing it constantly, as if they were always with me. Ricardo suddenly turned pale. He remained silent and motionless, only his big sad eyes blinking frequently. That's how people usually do it when they want to hold back tears. What's wrong? I asked, alarmed. It's her, the man struggled to say. It's my daughter, your Monica. I sold her to your husband many years ago. This pendant, I carved it for my Anita. Ricardo covered his face with his hands and wept silently. I started crying too. What did you say? I suddenly remembered. My husband bought our baby girl from you? Yes. He handed me a large wad of cash, said it was for my Anita's funeral, and even managed to save some for a rainy day. I can't even bear to remember it. It makes me nauseous. But at the time, it seemed like the only way out. And Pedro told me that he found our Monica under a bush in an old basket. It's so strange. He never lied to me. He probably didn't want to upset you. Ricardo shrugged. Yeah, what's the use of remembering all that now? My girl's gone anyway, or rather, my girls, my precious ones. I began to wipe away tear after tear, which like dewdrops on flower petals rolled down my emaciated face. Mrs. Ricardo, come for tea sometime. We share the same pain. It seems easier to deal with it together. I think I agree. It's easier together, replied the man, rubbing his nose with 2 fingers. Of course. See you then. It feels like I found a brother I never had. It's so easy to communicate with Ricardo, so pleasant to accept his help around the house and to please him with delicious meals. I feel like he enjoys my company too, because he's found someone who not only doesn't judge him for what he's done, but also shares his pain. Over lunch, we talked about various things. You know, I sleep so badly, I complained. Sometimes I can't close my eyes until dawn. Even sleeping pills don't help. They seem to make it worse. I went through that too. I didn't sleep for days. I wandered around like a shadow. But a herb helped me. What? I exclaimed. It's not what you think. I have a friend. He lives in the capital now. His father is a herbalist. He lives in a hut in the middle of the forest. He treats people. There was always a crowd at his house, at least the last time I was there about 10 years ago. He helped me, gave me a concoction, the insomnia went away, and my nerves calmed down a bit. Wow. Living in the middle of the forest these days? It's like something out of a fairy tale about magical gnomes, I smiled. Is it far? Not far. Come on, maybe he's still available. Let's do it. Otherwise, I'll lose my mind with this insomnia soon. One rainy Saturday morning, Ricardo picked me up in his old truck and we set off to visit the herbalist, as we jokingly called him. We left the town, with fields on the left and ravines and forests on the right, forests everywhere. It's picturesque here, he said. Yes, and nothing really changes. It's been fields and forests for the last 20 years, Ricardo commented, turning right. We're almost there. We came to an old house with a slightly crooked porch. Look, it's still standing, but there's no one around. The old man must have passed away, Ricardo speculated. What a shame, I sighed. But the door of the hut creaked open and a little girl of about 6 or 7 appeared on the porch. She had short, curly hair, happily tousled in all directions. Have you come to see Grandpa? She asked excitedly. Yes, dear, I replied. Are you his granddaughter? What's your name? Laura. But Grandpa calls me Lo. Oh my God, she looks exactly like my Lorita, I whispered to Ricardo. But she doesn't look anything like my friend, or his wife, he pondered. Don Juan, is that you? Exclaimed Ricardo, hugging the old man. Ricky, is that you, my boy? The old man narrowed his eyes. Yes, it's me, Don Juan, and this is Rosa. He gestured to me. Hello, I said. Hello, come in. How can I help you? Asked Don Juan. Don Juan, do you still have that miracle elixir for insomnia? Ricardo smiled broadly. I've got everything. Where's Lo? Where's that little dish? I told her to bring some water. Oh, what a restless child, said Don Juan. Is she your granddaughter? I asked. You could say that. I found her. She seemed to have fallen from the sky. I could barely cope. She was all bruised. I had to cut her hair short like a boy's. She wore bandages for a month and a half, poor thing. Why didn't you report it to the police? I asked. They must be looking for her. She was weak. I didn't want to traumatize her further. I clung to her as if she were my own, replied Don Juan. The door suddenly opened and Laura came in with a jug of water. Grandma, the little girl exclaimed, almost knocking the jug out of my hands. I turned to her and covered my mouth with my hand. Lorita, young lady, is it really you? It's me. Why haven't you come for so long? And where's Mommy? Tears began to well up in my eyes as I hugged her. Virgin Mary, is that you? I didn't finish the sentence. Ricardo and Don Juan watched in silence, as if paralyzed. It couldn't be Lorita, alive. But then, who was the girl with her bracelet on her wrist? The three of them walked home together. Lorita chatted animatedly on the way, telling me everything she could remember. We were driving down the road with Mom and suddenly we saw a little girl. She must have been about 6 like me. Mom stopped and asked why she was there alone. She was crying, saying she didn't want to live with that bad aunt anymore. We put her in our car. I gave her my favorite stone bead bracelet, the one Grandpa gave me. And then the car hit something, and I flew down from somewhere. Afterwards, I only remember the kind grandfather from the forest who gave me some ointments and different bitter decoctions. I think that's what he called it. And then you arrived, my dear lord, my little one. I thought you were dead, he said calmly. And Mama's dead, isn't she? Asked Laura, looking mature. I nodded. I didn't want to lie to my granddaughter, but I couldn't find the strength to talk about Monica's death. And who is this man driving? Asked Lorita. This little one. This is your grandfather. What do you mean, my grandfather? Pedro is already dead. That's right, my joy. But this is another grandfather of yours, Grandpa Ricardo. Lorita didn't ask any more questions, falling asleep on my shoulder. Ricardo and I didn't speak either. We knew for sure that a completely different life had just begun. We had a reason to live. How fortunate it was that Ricardo approached me in the cemetery and started that difficult conversation. If it hadn't been for that conversation, we might never have found our Lorita, our only granddaughter for both of our precious hearts.